Okay. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this afternoon session that is sponsored by Dirac. We're very pleased to have you here. I know I'm very excited for this session because I've heard your name a million times, but I don't know quite how your process differentiates from competitors' processes. So I'm looking forward to some education in this one myself. So the title of this is State-of-the-Art Room Correction in the Custom Install Market Today and into the Future. I'm moderating it, and my name is Arlen Schweiger. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of CE Pro Magazine. Again, very happy to have you all join us, and very happy to have Dirac sponsor it. So we'll start off from my left and go down the line. Gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and the companies that you're with and where you are in the supply chain and why you're up on the stage in a session about Dirac.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mathias Johannson. I'm the Chief Product Officer and one of the co-founders of Dirac.
Hi, I'm Dallas Dingle. I'm the founder of Supercalibrations, which is a CEDIA company that is in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we've been, I guess I'm the originator in 1981, and we've been in business all that while, and have had a lot of good success in using Dirac products.
Hi everyone, my name is Ellis, and I am a professional audio reviewer from the YouTube channel Pursuit Perfect System, which you can all subscribe to now, please, by the way. But I've been a devout user of Dirac Live for many years and started working as a professional calibrator, so I'm out in people's homes all the time, working with it all the time, so that's why I'm here to talk about it.
I don't know why I needed to look at the prompt, but my name's David Kane. I'm the VP of Sales at Lenbrook. We own Blue Sound, NAD, and PSB. And we use Dirac in many of our products, which I'm sure we'll be getting onto in a bit.
And David, with that accent, you don't sound like the guys from Lenbrook who live in Massachusetts. Where are you representing from?
Terry and I are, original British, obviously, but I now live and am located in Toronto, where Lenbrook is based.
Very good. And in Dallas, I had a question for you in terms of your history in the custom electronics industry. Were you an integrator first before you were doing what basically is it's a calibration consultant company, right?
We're an integration company.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry. We're an integration company that does much what you see here at the CEDIA show. We install home networking, home audio, video. We do all that.
So it's well beyond home
calibration
theater.
comes into play with televisions, and we do the ISF-style calibrations on projectors and televisions as well.
All right. We'll have to hold the mics up. It sounds like we'll ask you to do that. So we'll start here on my left. Mathias, right, people hear about room correction. They hear about equalization or EQ software. What are some of the differences between those? Certainly there are companies that are here in the U.S. that people are very familiar with on certain AV receivers and other processors. But can you explain the differences of that software and how it really impacts the system's performance?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I think it's important. A lot of people don't realize that the weakest link of almost any kind of audio system is actually the room. The room acoustics are dominating the sound in the bass completely over the speaker. And we all know that sound performance is a lot about the bass, right? So that's the first thing to notice, that room correction has a really important role to play in any kind of serious home theater or stereo system. And then there are different approaches, of course, to how you do this. I mean, the first basic thing is just to get the amplitudes, the levels right, and the gain, the delays right of each speaker. And then the next level is to maybe apply some EQ and try to EQ it, like a graphical EQ or more advanced features. Anyway, you need to measure the room response, because the room response varies a lot, of course, from position to position. That's just room acoustics. So that's the first step. In order to get even a good chance of doing a reasonable room correction, you need thorough measurements. That's really the first step. And And we measure in a number of positions so that we don't just get one position. And then what we do is not just the frequency response correction. Frequency response correction is absolutely necessary, and it's important to get the target curve right, obviously, so you get a smooth response and a smooth bass response in particular. But then what we do other than just frequency response correction, which is different from most approaches, is the time domain correction. And what is that? Well, we talk a lot about early reflections, because you get early reflections from each of the speakers in your systems, and it's different from one speaker to the other. And what happens then with a stereo image? Well, we have two ears, and how we perceive localization is dependent on the correlation between the two ears. So if your speakers are perfect, which they probably aren't, then you have the room, and that messes up the staging because it messes up the correlation between my two ears. And a big part of that is the early reflections. The ratio between the direct wave and the early reflections has a big impact on the perceived localization and sound image. So impulse response correction is really key in obtaining that, really good phantom voice imaging, for example, and the exact localization of different sounds. So that's one of the, I think, really key insights that we have that separates us also from other approaches in this industry.
Mathias, is it applicable to both two-channel stereo and surround sound?
Absolutely. I mean, in home theater, room correction has been a de facto thing you need for many, many years. But it's equally important in stereo systems. And in fact, even perhaps more importantly, because you don't have the center channel. So if you care about the voice and the center, the phantom center, room correction has a big role to play there. But then of course with home theater and say Atmos and so on, again, localization is the key. That's what it's all about. It's an immersive format. And when you have multiple speakers, you won't typically not have the same speakers in all the locations. Again, that messes up the sound imaging. So that's another important area of why you do this and why it's really helpful in home theaters to bring out that immersive, truly immersive feeling, because it makes the speakers be more equal, and that's extremely important.
Definitely, and remind us in terms of the manufacturers that you work with, that you partner with, whose products you're now embedded in. What are some of the brand names that you're in now that everyone here would know about?
Well, first of all, we have David here from Lenbrook, so of course we're very proud to have NAD use Dirac Live in their products. And we also have a lot of other partners. OnQ Pioneer, Denon and Marantz is what we call Dirac Ready, which means that you can that their AVRs are Dirac enabled, but you need to buy the license to activate it. And then we have a lot of the Harman brands like Arcam, JBL Synthesis, and so on, and Storm Audio, Audio Control, and a few others as well.
And also here at the show, where can everyone find you? Are there particular demos that are really catered to show everyone, or I guess let everyone hear the difference between a non-room corrected demo and a room corrected system?
So we have a very good demo of our latest technology, active room treatment, in the Storm Audio listening room over there. And then there is also demos at across the street at Massimo, which have the Dirac Live room correction in 2 different rooms set up here. So those are the 3 ones that I'd definitely recommend here. There might be some more that I'm not even aware of, actually.
Right, and well, I could say with the Storm Audio one, judging from some of the lines that I've seen moving past it, you're going to want to make some time booked in for that, more than just the demo itself, probably about double or triple the amount of time. Oh, and so one question that I did have, getting back to the stereo versus the surround sound, does the integrator then have to take 2 separate measurements through the room, or is it one measurement that's going through all the channels that then covers that system?
Yes, exactly. I mean, if it's one and the same system, you need to measure it once, and then you make 2 different setups from that.
Okay, so that makes sense. All right, so let's talk about the how our installers are making use of this, very complex software that, certainly digs deep into the calibration aspects, where we know, a lot of the installers certainly come from the techie AV background. So this is kind of their wheelhouse. They're looking for products that can really ramp up a system. So Dallas and Terry, tell us, so we'll start with you, Dallas. How did you start implementing Dirac into, your high performance systems, and what other applications do you use it for? Is it multi-purpose rooms, media rooms, and things like that?
I guess my point would be, over the years, I'm the elder statesman here, so I've been doing this for about 50 years. And in the early days, you just had to live with the room acoustics. I mean, you went to a person's home to install, in those days, a stereo, and you would not know what to expect until you turned it on. And so it kind of ruined. So if you made a big investment in loudspeakers,
Hold it up.
yeah, if you made a big investment in loudspeakers, then that gets lost in the room. When you first start playing, the echoes or particularly the bass responses, as Mathias was mentioning, is that the bass gets exaggerated in like what I would describe as the 80s cycle area, is kind of typical for most rooms. And so when you try to play something that has low bass, like at 30 cycles, then that is not there. You lose it altogether. And Dirac, of course, I did this for many years, and we tried to correct with putting acoustical treatments, and I've done just a ton of that. And you can spend a lot of time doing that and just get a little improvement. So one day when I first experimented with Dirac, I couldn't believe it, to be honest. I didn't even take all the measurements. I just took 3 measurements, and I thought, this can't work that well. And I listened, and I went, oh my God, this is the best my system had ever sounded. So I knew that, it's a system where you can buy back the value in your loudspeakers. So if you're spending, a lot of people spend a lot of money, thousands and thousands of dollars on loudspeakers, and you want to get the most out of that you can, and certainly Dirac offers that.
Did you find that when it started coming onto the market, did you do a lot of upselling into or upgrading what people already had and saying, hey, this just came out, you think your system sounds good now, here we go?
Absolutely, and we do a lot of retrofitting of existing systems, and certainly the Dirac is an automatic in that regard. You just have to use it really in order to, like I said, it kind of guarantees you a semblance of the sound quality that the speaker manufacturer was expecting you to hear. And so, like I said, we lived for many, many years trying to do that in a bunch of different ways, and certainly on the very high end, people would do acoustic. You could design the room to be a certain shape that would help minimize the problems, but it really was always difficult to get your speakers to sound as you would expect. And certainly when you go to a stereo store or an electronics store, they would demonstrate those in a room that sounds good usually. So Dirac is a lifesaver as far as I'm concerned.
Sure, I'm sure it tells you that flexibility story, the installations where instead of, like you say, having to really redesign the room, they can work with what's there. So Terry, what's your company's experience been positioning Dirac products and, having them really just kind of amplify your calibration prowess?
Yes, so it's a little different for me because I'm coming at it from a personal point of view. So I was massive into DSP for many years, trying lots of different solutions from the mindset that you could only equalize bass. You couldn't equalize above 250 hertz. That was seen as a bad thing to do. So I spent years trying all the solutions that were available, could get better results, but not necessarily perfect results. And somebody recommended Dirac to me, and I was a non-believer. It's like, there's no way, because at that point I was doing all manual equalization, measuring with Roux, doing everything I possibly could. And again, I could get better results, but never quite right results. And I tried Dirac Live for the first time, downloaded the software, tried it, and it was like, wow, this actually does work. And not only does it work for bass, it works for everything else as well. So that was like a, how do you put it, like a, well, I'm in, I'm hooked, right? This is a believer. I'm a believer in this product. And over a period of time, I tried to learn how to use it better, if that makes sense, how to fine-tune a system sound to be more how I wanted it to be. And it was the first time I'd used a solution where I'd move a target curve around and the sound correlated to what I was looking at the screen. Normally you would look at a graph and think, this graph looks amazing, why is it sounding too lean, or why is the timing gone weird, or why is it just not sounding exactly how I'm seeing it, whereas with Dirac, I could adjust the target curve and it would give me the sound that I was interested in. But that was a number of years ago. What I've seen over a period of time is the availability of Dirac Live in lots of much more affordable products, which means as a calibrator, I've been able to go out and work with normal people, real world people, are putting systems together in their homes, piecing it together, maybe upgrading to products that include Dirac Live. And with the same system, with the same speakers, with the same subwoofer, without moving anything, without touching anything, I've been able to get them significantly better sound performance, more balanced sound performance, more bass, but more tight bass, better sound stage, better imaging, maybe taking treble away a little bit if it's too bright, adding a bit of treble if there's not enough. You know, that tonal balance control for me has been a massive thing. And when you take that away and you just listen to a standard speaker, you're like, oh yeah, I really like it, but I would like a bit more here and like a bit more there. And you can try and move a speaker and that can achieve things, but you then achieve one area, you lose another area. I think measuring, looking at a measurement, being able to adjust the sound to be how you like it is like a massive tool, right? And you can really do a lot with it when you understand what to change to adjust what you're going to hear, if that makes any sense to anyone, hopefully.
Sure. So Terry, can you tell us a little bit about your reference systems, that what you started out with, and then what you've swapped out to get Dirac into your system?
So interestingly, I started with, and I still use a computer music source, one I built myself, and I've kept the same source, music source for hi-fi for a number of years because there was no real opportunity to use Dirac Live within hi-fi, and obviously that's changing now with products from NAD, etc. But for a number of years, that was really the main way for hi-fi. AV's been different, but for hi-fi. So for me, it's really interesting when people say room correction's an AV thing, which of course it is, but I've always used Dirac Live for hi-fi, and I started with it for hi-fi. So for me, it's like, I look at it the completely other way around to what a lot of people do. So the software aspect's still there. It's always been a really good and affordable way because you don't need to buy hardware, it's just software. But now with excellent products from NAD and some others, I don't want to mention them because David's there, but some other really good products, some other brands, like, you know, we can all access this now. It's very, very affordable.
Yeah, those are some great points. David, now clearly you are talking to integrators all the time. You're trying to help them upsell their systems, you know, get the most bang for their bucks where they're doing good, better, best systems. Clearly, as Terry said, the availability of Dirac software is much more widespread than it was several years ago. But when you're trying to talk to integrators about, hey, here's how you need to bring this up with customers, here's the sales pitch, you know, here's kind of a script, for lack of a better word. You know, obviously you're probably not going to give them some demo material. Maybe you'll have some suggestions, but what are you saying to integrators? Like, here's the best way that you could demonstrate and talk about this technology that might be intimidating for people.
I think the first thing is, if possible, do a demo. You know, the Dirac demo is a phenomenal sales tool in and of itself.
Like an A/B demo?
Absolutely, just the on and off feature of the room, just to show them how you know, varied and random the room can be on its own, and then to flip to a Dirac setting. It's just a real light bulb moment for a lot of dealers and the clients as well, and it really is an amazing tool. The other thing is just the versatility, is just to explain, you know, the genuine versatility in the room. From our point of view at NAD, we partnered about 10 years ago. I think we were pioneering at how even the licensing structure looks. So those other brands, that's okay, because that's down to us. And again, from a receiver from $1,500 that someone can pretty much do themselves, up to a system where Terry would go along or Dallas and calibrate it for them in a real high-end system. And it's, again, it gives that versatility across the spectrum. And the wonderful thing from a manufacturer is we can say to the customer, in a sense, it doesn't matter about your room. Do your best. Most importantly, make it look good for the sign-off. But the acoustic obstacles in the room, we can kind of really work with Dirac, and we can kind of fix the majority of those for AV, but equally for stereo. Increasingly we're seeing that being used in stereo setups.
Sure. So now from the dealer and calibrator standpoint, how do you guys bring up the discussions about the importance of room correction software and why people shouldn't just say, I'll just go into the menu, I can get this, I can figure this out myself, I've got golden ears, I don't need to hire these services for just calibrating?
I guess I'm going to feel I'm pretty fortunate in that people don't really ask me what the products are that I'm installing many times, because they have got a referral from somebody, and they probably had Dirac, to be honest, and that's why, so that's my point here, is that installing, even if you don't go into a sales pitch about the value of Dirac, which I have mentioned many times, and of course they see me, I say, you're going to have to be quiet now, and after going to do this microphone measurement, so people are aware eventually that I'm measuring the system. But you're going to get referrals from that, absolutely, because the sound quality is so good. I had one client say that he's got a $100,000 projector, and it's in a dedicated room environment, or a home theater, and he says more of his friends say the sound is what's spectacular. So, and again, that has a lot to do with Dirac.
Sure, and I think for our audience, we really live by the whole mantra of that, the theater experience really is 50% video and 50% audio to get that full immersion. Dallas, have you been able to, or do you bother trying to charge for design services for the calibration itself, or does that just come as part of your whole package?
Usually we include that as part of the. We do charge. We have a labor charge for doing some things, and the calibration charge is a little bit higher, I think. And it usually, you have to give yourself enough time. And to be honest, once in a while, if you have time, it's, if you're not quite happy with the way it came out, you may want to try it again. And certainly, you want to make sure you're trying to do the calibration when the room is relatively quiet, and there's other factors involved that can affect the results. So occasionally I've been known to measure a couple, 3 times. In my own system at home, I don't think I can actually count how many times I've done it. It's kind of fun at some point because you can sense, slight differences. And I was going to mention earlier, one thing that I've noticed in home theater environments, or in particular a media room, which is not a dedicated space, is that the imaging that goes on between the rear channels in a 5-channel system and the front channels is greatly enhanced with Dirac. So things flying over your head or activities going on, they come out from the side. And that's something you don't really hear much about, but that is extremely valuable.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Terry, tell us about how you get involved or broach the topic of why your service is valuable, why it's really kind of necessary to optimize the system.
Well, it's interesting. So my YouTube channel is Pursuit Perfect System, but really Pursuit of a Perfect System. And I think we all know when we listen to something, we can be happy with it, but I think we know when we can be happier. And I think the calibration process is interesting for people, because a lot of the work that I get, calibration work that I get, is from people that have done their best. Some of them have done a really good job, but they know it could be better. It could be that bit better. So they hire a professional, like you would maybe a chef, right? If you're going to get a nice dinner, you go to a restaurant, right? You hire the professional to come in with maybe a different set of ears and a different set of experience. And I've sat down before sometimes when they play their systems to me, what do you think? And I actually panic thinking, wow, this is really good. Can I even make any difference here? But for me, the value of Dirac is I travel all over the country. I do calibrations for people in other countries from home, remotely, without even listening to the system. But because the results are so reliable and because I know the product so well, I can predict what things are going to be like, right? And that's not easy, but it's possible. And I've proved that it's possible over the last few years. So even when the starting point is very, very good, you can use Dirac to find more ways. You know, how do I unlock? For me, every system calibration is like a little puzzle, like a little Rubik's Cube puzzle. And it can take a little bit of time if you really want to push the maximum, but you know, you can unlock that puzzle. And then for me, it's like, how do you find the magic of this system? And that's what I'm trying to do. And it sounds very arrogant to say that, but that's my own little like a goal of every single time I walk in there. It's like, you know, how can I find the very best sound? And you know, Dirac allows that.
Sure. I mean, we, you know, as audiophiles, we're all looking for that holy grail, right? I'm totally on the lookout for that. I want to ask either one of you, has having the Dirac software in there helped you out with repeat business where, you know, customers go out and change out the whole furniture in their room and they say, all right, well, can we rerun the software? Or, you know, what do I do now?
Exactly that. To me, that's the most gratifying thing when someone upgrades their system and they're straight on the phone to you or they email you straight away and they want to book you straight away. And it's like, well, I can't come, obviously, now. And it's like they can't enjoy their system until you've been back and calibrated it. So that does happen, of course, and that's very, very rewarding. But interestingly, you think, you know, if people find really good sound for their own systems, that might stop them upgrading, but that hasn't been my experience. Sometimes when you've calibrated their system months later, they're upgrading it again because they're actually enjoying it more. And I think when you enjoy something more, you see the value in spending more money on it. You know, not everybody does, not everybody can, but it's surprising how many people go up the model or they go out and add the 9, you know, to get 9 speakers on the bass layer rather than 7, and which of course requires another calibration, or they add 2 more subwoofers at the back because they want a bit more bass fun. And you know, it's like the more you enjoy something, the more value you see in your life, the more you're going to want to spend money on it. And I'm the same for everything in my life too.
I was going to say that it's the emotional connection to the music that's really what you're after. And I would say when you complete a Dirac calibration, you're enhancing that significantly, you know, with balanced frequency response and correcting for phase. I mean, all of a sudden you're getting the kind of results that, as I mentioned earlier, that the speaker manufacturers had intended, and also that the recording engineers had intended. And so, yeah, you're kind of, I find that, you know, there was some reviewer that used to call it the goosebump effect or something. Is when you're listening to some really good, you know, probably classical music, you know, your skin starts to chill a little bit, and you know, and that's a sign that your home system is working well, for sure.
I was just going to say there's something more subtle about it as well. It's not just the drastic, the furniture's going out and they're replacing it. The fact that you can have the various profiles in Dirac. You know, a customer can have a profile for a certain genre of music or individual seating positions in their listening room. So it gives this additional expansion of where they can get the goosebump effect. You know, and it's personalized. It's personalized to, you know, the individual as much as it is actually being personalized to the room as well.
Right, and so going back to Mathias, I wanted to ask you, you know, certainly I've been to the website, you know, I've looked through it. It can be I feel like it can be very intimidating for even, you know, a dealer who kind of knows their stuff about calibration and about, you know, setting up AVRs or processors, but it does look very complex. So how do you, in talking to your dealer base, really sort of distill all the data that they're going to see, all the measurements, and how they're able to implement those insights or talk to the customers about it? If the customer says, hey, you know, why does my room sound a lot better now, or my system sound a lot better now than it did 5 minutes ago?
I mean, first of all, the technology behind it is very complex and complicated, yes. Of course, for us, the trick is that in the end, it translates to something very simple, an on-off effect, where you actually hear the difference. And that's when people start listening, right? Then that's when you get their attention and can explain what goes on and why your room is messing up the sound again. So it always comes back to getting that AB effect, where you actually hear this is for real. This is not just this half a dB improvement that only a very trained listener can hear. And then, of course, we try to make them understand what, like your first question here today, what is different about our system compared with others. It is a very complex thing, right? First of all, you have the frequency response and so on, but the time domain is something that most people don't really appreciate yet. It's something that we have as an educational mission to explain to people, and there is lots of research on how early reflections are really detrimental to the clarity and the sound imaging. So that's how we try then to discuss this in terms of showing pictures and so on of before and after. That's also helpful, right, to visualize the frequency responses and the impulse responses before and after. So yeah, it's in, you know, in one way very complex and in another way very simple, because the end result is always about hearing, and if you don't love it when you hear it, well then it's just theoretical, all of it.
Right. Terry, go ahead.
1, 2. Yeah, can I just throw in something there? Because something that you guys implemented recently is the auto target curve generation system. And we all fear our jobs becoming redundant at some point, right? It's like, originally the target curve system was a very manual affair. And I used to, you know, there's a bit of a joke around the Terry Ellis target curve, right? It's been a little bit of a joke. And now the auto target curve system hasn't made me redundant, I'm really glad, but it's made the process of, you know, increasing bass or reducing treble or finding a tonal balance preference much easier than it used to be, rather than you having to manually draw it. Now the sliders you can push up and down. So if you're new to the system and you listen, you think, well, this is a little bit lean, you slide the bass slider up and it won't be lean, simple as that. Or it's a little bit sharp at the top, you slide the treble slider down, and obviously you can see in decibels what you're changing. And that's a very easy way to get started. But I'm really glad that you can still go into more of an advanced mode, manually draw target curves, which allows you to totally curate the sound to your liking. And there's a hell of a lot you can do with that. So thank you for not making me totally redundant yet, but it's definitely easier now than it's ever been to get good results.
Sure, Dallas.
I was going to say that there are, I think, you know, anybody who has sold audio equipment realizes that some people have an appreciation, should we say, of more bass. And when you do a calibration on the Dirac, you know, with the Dirac target curve, it produces excellent bass for sure. But I think what I've found is that there's a curve that actually NAD is offered. You can download the target curve and load it onto your file, and that has a distinctly higher bass response. And I think that's particularly helpful listening at lower volumes, because you don't hear bass as well at lower volumes. So when a person is not somebody that plays at rock concert levels, you know, then that will sound warmer and nicer. And then you can actually, in many equipment, including the NAD, you can load several target files in there, and actually, you know, for certain situations you may want the NAD curve, and certain situations you may want the default curve.
Mathias, in terms of the feature sets of the software and what it helps produce, can you tell us about, is there certain types of, first of all, how many channels does it support? Is there an actual channel count? And then Dallas was talking about, you know, possibly using classical music, which I could totally see in terms of all the imaging that's possible and really showing the depth of an actual orchestra, what the room sounds like that they're playing in. Are you also able to demonstrate an A-B more subtle music, you know, whether it's like a guitar duet where it's in 2 channels, or a subtler thing on a movie than just, you know, some action war bullets flying around scene?
Absolutely. But the choice of program material when you demonstrate and when you actually, you know, try to rate the system is an important one. And I think you need to, I mean, Sean Olive and Floyd Toole done a lot of research on that. And the way I prefer to demonstrate any kind of system really is with a lot of broadband material, pop music and stuff, because that excites the whole system. When you do something more narrow band, like a jazz quartet or something, you only hear parts of the system, right? So, on the other hand, when you want to listen and evaluate imaging, you might want to have some tracks with very clear localization of the voice and all the different instruments. So, although you can hear the difference, depending on your system, I mean, you will hear some systems, some rooms might have very specific problems that are excited by certain types of music. So you need to listen to a few different tracks, and it's also interesting. Sometimes people will want to do an A/B comparison, just switching back and forth like that. That's one effect, but when you then do the long-term listening, it's another effect. Because in an A/B, we're easily fooled in a way, right? More bass, louder sound is going to sound better. In the long term, that's not true. So you also, when you evaluate the system, you need to also listen for a long time and just, try to judge in absolute terms rather than just A/B-ing it.
And is there a max capacity on the channels?
Forgot about that question. Yes, no, there isn't actually. That depends on the system that we're working with. The software can work with any number of channels, really. Yes.
Okay, so it varies. Let's say you have a Storm Audio that's got 13
exactly. You might
channels.
have 32
or,
channels,
yeah,
and in another system it might be
right.
stereo.
Okay.
Exactly.
David, let me go down to you from the manufacturer perspective. Where do you see this heading? Where does Lenbrook envision more applications to use room correction software? I don't know. Is it already in distributed audio? Certainly, you have some great products that cover that. Theaters and where else?
Yeah. So currently, AVRs is the kind of bedrock. We have some flagship products that are be released in the early spring next year, which will have the new active room treatment as well. So I think theatre, there's definitely that kind of foundation. We've had Dirac in two-channel stereo products now for a few years. We're just launching a new streamer, the NAD M66, which has 4 independent subwoofer outputs. And so when you add the combination of independent control of that much, sub, along with a fantastic, power stage as well, it really does give you that amazing experience. And when Dirac takes out the issues with the room, again, you're left with how the artist wants you to hear it, right? So 2-channel is definitely something, and now that's a $6,000 streamer. We own other brands that are more affordable, and we're ever looking to direct to ways. At the moment, the NAD enthusiast or professional can deal with that level of complexity and technology. In some of our other brands, we'd love to have some level of room correction, but we need a little bit more simplicity. And I know Dirac are working on the ability to use other devices for microphones and other things, because then that broadens the availability to a much wider audience. And we would love to implement that to more music-loving consumers.
Great. And you know what? Let's wrap it up with more about. I want to hear more of your demo picks from Dallas and Terry. When your reference picks, if you had to do one or two, first off on the hi-fi 2-channel side, and then an Atmos selection, either soundtrack or I know there's a lot more Dolby Atmos music these days.
You know what, reference tracks and films and stuff, for me it's the hardest thing, because as soon as you use it for a reference, you hate it. You can't watch it again, right? Once you've watched scenes multiple times. So for music, I try and just listen to whatever I've been listening to most recently. And I'm the sort of listener where I find an artist or an album and I listen, get bored, move on, rather than, raping my old favourites from when I was a youngster or stuff. So whatever I'm familiar with, whatever I'm most familiar with, because I've listened to that the most, and I can kind of judge what I'm doing based on what I'm used to hearing. The movies are a little bit different. For me, I like to use, you got me now, the names. Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. What's that movie with us?
Oh, the latest, A Star Is Born.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, because you've got a real mixture in there. You've got a live sound. You've got close mic. You've got indoors. You've got outdoors. You've got singing. You've got difficult to, hear speech. So that's fantastic. Literally just for speech and a little bit of bass. And then you've got movies like Ford versus Ferrari for panning. You've got what else do I use? I think the new Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse has got an outstanding soundtrack, because you can just watch that and there's lots going on. So again, it's just like whatever I'm familiar with at the time, really, rather than anything too specific.
Sure, those all sound very good too. And Dallas, how about you, if you want to weigh in?
It probably not. You can probably find it on one of the streaming services somewhere. But there's a group that made a recording with Telarc back in 1980 something that is called Papa Do Ron Ron, and it's a Beach Boys cover band. And the imaging and the sound, and they used a microphone, I can't remember the name of the microphone now, but it's currently selling used on eBay for $35,000. So the microphone quality was in the ozone. So that recording, gets my attention. And just recently, I was exposed to an old Peggy Lee recording, which I'm sure I haven't ever listened to her up until very recently, but the recording quality was extremely good, and I play it all the time now. And on the movie side, I'm not as expert in that, but certainly my client the other day said he had his family over and they watched Maverick, and it was better than being at the movie theater. So I would have to say Maverick is probably a good choice, and you see it here.
Yeah, I think Maverick is the most popular one at the moment, right? But if we do that too many times, you can never watch it again, so be warned on that.
Right, exactly. And Mathias, do you happen to have any favorites?
Well, yeah, I do actually. There's one track that not a lot of people are using, but I love to test imaging and center imaging for stereo system, and that's Diana Krall track called My Love Is. Very distinct. It's got a double bass. It's got like this.
Is that a live recording or studio?
No, that's a studio recording, but it's really well done, and it's really nice to get that center stage, hear the accuracy of the center stage. So that's one that's not that usual. Then, of course, there's one track that you can never escape, and it's the Hotel California, the live one. We can't escape it. We know it, right? But it's actually quite good. You have the audience, you have the drums, you have the voice, you have everything there, and we're all very familiar with it.
Right, and of course the way it builds up and up before they start in with the vocals, definitely something like that. Great. Well, let's cap it with that. You've given us all some excellent ideas and really some great insights about the difference between just basic EQ calibration versus room correction, and certainly it's something that we've been preaching. I know Bob Archer, our senior editor, has been talking for years about how the most important factor in a room is the room itself. You could have a 6-figure system sound lousy in the room, and you can have a 4-figure system sound great just because of how it's been corrected or designed or treated. So very interesting. So thank you very much to our sponsor, Dirac, and thank you all for listening to our presentation. We really appreciate it. Thank you to the rest of our panelists. We do have some time for Q&A if anyone has any questions while we're up here. We do have a microphone there if you'd like to come in and ask anything of our panelists. No? All right, well, on that note, thank you.
I'm just going to quickly say the Dirac booth is over there, and there are some free licenses available if anybody's interested to try Dirac Live. So I'm not sure how many there are left, but literally the booth is just there. If anybody wants to get a free license to try it out, head over there.
Right, and remember to go get in line early for the Storm Audio demonstration. So with that, thanks again, everybody. We really appreciate it.